Hello ladies and gents, my name is Dave and this comes from the YouTube channel Animal and Animus, and a warm welcome from the heart, the seat of the soul. What I'd like to do is share some information with you today and in future videos on dreams, the psyche and archetypes. Archetypes being patterns, forerunners of behaviour, and I've had a passion for Carl Jung's work and other analysts and authors' work for many years. I'm going to draw my experience from that and present that today. I'm going to cover some of the more commonly known archetypes, and I have a chart behind me to explain some of that in a minute. But I'd just like to express my gratitude and thanks to people who've helped me, and some do help me along the way. So they are Carl Gustav Jung, Marie-Louise von Franz, Anne Baring and Anne Gadd, Tom Chetwynd and Pamela Ball, Robert Johnson, Marion Woodman, Lindsay C. Harris, Nick, Larry and Rob. Thanks very much guys, and I appreciate all the input into my life. It's my understanding that we're here for the evolution of our soul, and dreams play a major part in that. So I'm just going to put this to one side. If I turn to this flip chart, and my apologies for the different coloured ink, it's faint in some areas and dark in others. On the top there is the persona, the masks that we wear, many masks, many times in different areas of society. Below that one is the ego. My understanding of that is the organ of consciousness. Then we have the complexes, groups of related ideas, thoughts and images in the unconscious mind. The shadow archetype, so that would be in me someone about my height, slim with dark coloured hair, so it's the complete opposite of this colour hair. In a woman, it'd be the same sex with possibly different coloured hair, different features. The anima, the female aspect in a male. The animus, the male aspect in a female. And then the self, big self, true self, higher self. Below that is the anima mundi, the soul of the world. And then there's the inner child, mother and father complexes. So excuse me a moment while I turn this over. This is done by Carl Jung many years ago. It's a theory of the psyche, and as I mentioned on the previous page, in consciousness, the persona and the ego and the outer world, reaching out to the outer world. And into unconsciousness, we have the complex, the groups of related ideas, thoughts and images. The shadow archetype, directly behind the ego. Then the anima, the soul, the female and male. The other side is the animus, spirit, almost like a separate identity, the male and the female. And below that is the self, the centre and circumference of us. So that's in our inner world. And further down is the cultural unconscious and the collective unconscious. And there again is the soul of the world, the anima mundi. Excuse me a moment, I'll just turn this page again. On this page, there's a diagram about the four functions in our mind, similar to four doors. So there's a dominant one on this part, the thinking, so the inferior would be in the unconscious area is feeling, and two others, intuition and sensation. But in this one, it's the feeling that's the inferior. And there's a need to develop that, and I'll explain why. Our inferior function is the door through which all of the figures of the unconscious come through into our consciousness. If our consciousness like a room with 4 doors. That one is the one which the shadow, anima, animus, and self can come through. It's closest to the unconscious. The inferior one remains barbaric, undeveloped, our weak spot. The disagreeable one, thing which disturbs our balance, causes us trouble. Something happens from within or without. To throw the door open again, it cannot be shut, leads to our growth. Excuse me again while I turn this over. This page is about the anima and animus, the female and male, the male and female, and the relationships. If a male and a female argue, the opposites come out to argue the contrasexual image, the anima and animus. So they would come out in an undeveloped state and argue, then the argument would cease, they'd go back in again, and the person or the people would say, what was that all about? Wish I hadn't said that, don't know where that came from. But it come from the anima, so it would come from the unconscious, undeveloped anima in me, and the unconscious, undeveloped animus. If we develop those, there's less chance of arguing and having strife. When we fall in love, we usually project the qualities we didn't integrate in the anima and animus onto our partners. In the same-sex relationships, it'd be the same-sex projections. In me, I would project the female, the anima, onto a woman. I could expect her to be the image, which would be extremely difficult because the woman is herself, not my image. And the woman could project the animus, the male side, onto a man and expect him to be the image. If we can take those projections back and let the people be themselves, we work with the projections and ask, what does that say about me? What undeveloped part do I need to make conscious? That would be better for all concerned. Easier said than done, but better for all concerned. Now, I'll just leave that for a moment. And I wanted to draw on this, the Dictionary for Dreamers by Tom Chetwynd, and read something that Tom's put in about the shadow archetype. So that would come through in me as the same sex in my dreams, and in the woman, the same sex in her dreams. Just find this for you. The shadow, a figure of the same sex as the dreamer, the person whom the dreamer fails to recognize, a vague instinct figure, sometimes standing slightly behind the dreamer, the neglected side of the individual, that part of their potential that they've never developed, sides of the character that have already been thwarted and frustrated, but above all, aspects never recognized. Everybody has their own individual shadow, and it's nearly always the worst side of themselves that they fail to recognize. It's a rare exception for somebody to have such a dingy conscious view of themselves that their shadow is the personification of their better side. The sensitive altruist will have a brutal egotistic shadow. The courageous individual will have a cowardly shadow. The ever-loving person will have a bitter, cantankerous shadow. Good example is Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. The encounter with the shadow is usually painful. The shock of seeing ourselves as we really are at our worst. To face it humbly is to accept ourselves, and from that to see the rest of reality as it is. It is the way to greater understanding of others, new insights, particularly into the unconscious. It often revives normal instincts, appropriate reactions, creative impulses that have been condemned to conscious oblivion, along with the evil and destructive sides of the personality. It is important both to know the enemy and to cultivate and channel this vital energy, that may otherwise erupt in a primitive and dangerous manner. If you think of the person you most detest in the world, mix in the worst characteristics of anyone else you know, and you have a fair idea of your own shadow. Frequently appears in dreams in the image of people whom the dreamer dislikes or envies in waking life. The unconscious side of ourselves is not destroyed by being ignored. On the contrary, it continues to seethe and fester below the surface and normally requires little more than a change of circumstances to become only too apparent. One of the most obvious ways for people to reveal these inequalities is by their obsessive and over-emotional dislike of the same qualities in other people. To withdraw these projections to recognize the inner conflict from which they arise is one of the major works of maturing. There are many stories about mistaking these projections for reality, attacking them and being destroyed by the resulting strife, war, etc. in the outside world and by madness paranoia in the inside. Very briefly, ladies and gents, I just read this bit about how the self, the true self, higher self, can manifest through our dreams as it works towards the archetypes of the wise elder male and the wise elder female. It can come through in rose gardens, courtyards, enclosed gardens, magical animals and mandalas. And dreams provide a view of reality from the point of view of our unconscious. I've had many years of fascination working with dreams. It's never always easy, but it's always been extremely insightful and beneficial. So I'll leave this YouTube talk here today, and hopefully you'll join me again for future ones on archetypes and other content. But I wish you a good day and take care of yourselves. Goodbye for now.